What's up guys, Nick here, and welcome to the first, or technically second, video of my top 100 games list. Now, the first video I posted was last week, and you can check that out in the description as it kind of explains why I did this project, what my rules are for this project, as well as some other honorable mentions and other stuff for this video series, as you can call it. I'll put the link in the description of the intro, but this video is going to be based off of games 100 through 91, and I hope you enjoy. Number 100. When the Nintendo Switch first came out, it had a short list of launch titles and an even smaller list of exclusives, as the best probably game on the Nintendo Switch launch day was the Breath of the Wild. But sadly, Breath of the Wild wasn't really exclusive, as it was also on the Wii U. And so there were very little exclusives to the Switch, some of them being 1-2 Switch, which wasn't good at all, Fast RMX, which was actually a pretty cool racing game and barely didn't make the list. But the game that did make the list, and I think deserves a spot on the list, is Snipperclips. Now, for those of you who don't know, Snipperclips is a co-op game. It can also be played as a single-player game, but it's kind of annoying as you have to swap between the two characters that you play as, which is Snip and Clip. Now, as a co-op game, in my opinion, I feel like it's the best co-op game on the Nintendo Switch. Each player controls either Snip or Clip, and you solve puzzles by clipping each other, clipping the environment, or solving some other puzzle, as every puzzle is kind of different. There isn't really a single puzzle that is exactly the same as the next, although there is a bonus world or DLC for the game that have similar challenges that are a bit tougher. The game also has DLC for 4-player co-op, as it adds 2 more little clips and the puzzles get even more chaotic and more difficult, as communication is key. I remember me and my friend Chris playing this game, and we had tons of fun just snipping each other and doing these chaotic puzzles and just having a blast, honestly. The game also has mini games like hockey and hoops that are also really fun to play, and even added more mini games to it with the DLC. And the game as a whole is just an enjoyable, cutesy, fun little puzzle game, and I highly recommend it if you don't have it on the Nintendo Switch, especially if you're looking for a co-op game, as, like I said before, it's my favorite co-op game on the Switch. Number 99. I've always been a very comedic guy. I've always liked telling jokes, making jokes, coming up with jokes, hearing jokes, pretty much anything that's funny I like. So when I heard that there were funny video games, obviously I gotta check them out. Conker's Bad Fur Day is probably one of the funniest adventure slash video game that I've ever experienced playing video games. It's got the weirdest humor, but it just goes so well, and there's so much fourth wall breaking as well as references, and it's just such an adventure that no other game really has. It just has such a feeling to it, environment, and it's funny almost all out throughout the entire game. The only thing that's bad about it though, and why it's at number 99, is pretty much its gameplay. Like, although Conker's Bad Fur Day probably has one of the wackiest, craziest story, as you're destroying Teddy Nazis and fighting this giant mountain of poo, as well as bouncing on Sunflower's breast, it really is unlike any other game. But as a game, it doesn't really perform the best, in my opinion. It has some issues with it, and it has some gameplay issues, and it's not perfect, which makes sense because it was in the N64 era, and Even the remake, although it did fix some of its problems, it was actually worse because it took out a lot of things that made Conker's Bad Fur Day, the original on the N64, so good. And so it's really good and really fun, but the gameplay just annoys and frustrates me so much, as there's a lot of backtracking as well as just things not working out as they should, and the physics and just a lot of things that frustrated me, and that's why it's kind of at number 99, as it's a really good and funny tale and story, but at the end of the day it's not a good video game. Number 98. I've always been a fan of coding, and when I heard that there was a game that was pretty much visual coding, I had to try it out. And that game is Baba Is You. Now, Baba Is You is a very interesting game, as like I said before, it's pretty much visual coding. The main premise of the game is to get the win, but the win condition isn't always what you expect it to be, as it's pretty much rearranging words to work in your favor, as it's making you think outside the box sometimes, and it's really making you think, how can I shift these words around to turn into my advantage to get that win condition and get the win. And it gets very, very complex throughout the levels as they introduce new mechanics, as well as even messing with the overworld, as to get the true final worlds and levels and stuff, you literally have to mess around with the overworld's code, or the letters and words, in order to even access the overworld level, or the final world levels and the final world. And even the final world itself, you need to solve the overworld in order to even just get to the levels, which is just so insane, and it's just so mind-blowing. Honestly, this game blew my mind of how outside the box you had to think, and to figure out some of these puzzles, as well as to even figure out how to get even to that last world. And it just was a crazy experience for me, and that's why it deserves its spot at number 98. Number 97. Watching TV was a big part of my childhood, as I would watch cartoons in the morning before school, as well as sometimes after school, and in the mornings of the weekends as well. And one of my favorite shows to watch was SpongeBob SquarePants. And as a kid, I did get to play SpongeBob SquarePants the movie, the video game, as well as SpongeBob SquarePants Creature from the Krusty Krab. But my 97 pick isn't actually a game that I played in my childhood. It was a game that I played after my childhood, which was SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for the Bikini Bottom. Now, this is a game I played a few years ago, and I really enjoyed it. At first, I thought SpongeBob SquarePants the movie, the video game, was really good, as it kind of had you experiencing the events of the movie, but Battle for Bikini Bottom kind of outshined it, as you're playing through pretty much the good parts of SpongeBob, being seasons 1, 2, and 3, and being able to explore the world of Bikini Bottom, being able to see Patrick, Mr. Krabs, Sandy, Plankton, and all those characters from the Bikini Bottom, as well as exploring the areas like Goo Lagoon, Kelp Forest, Rock Bottom, and there were so many other areas that you got to explore and go through missions, and it was honestly a lot of fun for especially a licensed game. And there's also, of course, that SpongeBob humor, as a lot of the levels and things that SpongeBob and Patrick and Sandy, as those are your playable characters, get to do, and it's really a funny experience, as it's pretty much experiencing through a giant episode of SpongeBob SquarePants, and it's a ton of fun. It also has that cheery SpongeBob music, as well as the dialogue, like I said before, being really funny and comedic as SpongeBob is. And the reason it's ranked at 97 though is because it isn't the perfect video game. Similar to Conker's Bad Fur Day, it's really funny, really charming, especially being able to see your favorite Sponge, being able to play as him and going through the world that you know from your childhood and seeing all these characters and places. It's a lot of fun, but as a game, it does have its flaws, and it's definitely not the best collectathon, but it is really, really good, and that's why it's at 97. Number 96. I've always been a fan of point and click adventure games, as well as like escape games where you found items in order to escape through a certain room. And what other better console there is to have than the Wii to have a point and click adventure game? And Zack and Wiki is where it's at. Now, Zack and Wiki is a point and click adventure game unlike any other point and click adventure game, as it's on the Wii. And being on the Wii, it uses the motion controls as well as the pointer controls as well as a gyroscope to solve puzzles. And the puzzles are a lot of fun, but they're also very challenging as well. There are multiple times where I had to think of my next move so that I didn't get a game over, as well as retrying multiple times on a level, as I would fail quite often doing the wrong move or doing the wrong input, and it got very difficult, especially towards the end. But overall, it was a really fun point and click adventure game, and I had a lot of fun playing it, especially with its humor and design. Number 95. Battle Royales were always a hit or miss for me, but the one that really hit me was Kirby Air Ride. Now you're probably thinking, Kirby Air Ride isn't a Battle Royale, that's a racing game. And yeah, you're kind of right, but it's really known for City Trial, where City Trial is a Battle Royale. And although it does have Air Ride and Top Ride, those modes aren't as fun as the main mode that a lot of people play, including me and my friends, which is City Trial, and it's the most fun, as each player is on a warp star and they go around the city finding other types of warp stars, whichever they like, as well as stats to increase, and as random events go on as well, and also Dragoon pieces, which are very hard to find but very competitive to find, as once you find 3 of them of the same kind, you get this awesome ultimate air ride machine that can pretty much beat any event. And the events are also random, whether it be destruction derby, or drag race, or an air race, or like a flight test or flight target. They're all really fun, and it's always a blast playing through City Trial. I still play through that, and it's just so much fun, especially with friends, and that's why it ranks its top at number 95. And the reason it's at number 95 and not higher is because, like I said before, although its modes like Air Ride and Top Ride aren't that fun, it outshines itself with City Trial. But having those 2 other modes that aren't really that fun, and having only one mode that's really fun, it kind of drops itself down to number 95. Number 94. Now here's a story for you. I used to have a Nintendo DS Lite, and I loved playing that thing. It was a lot of fun. And one day I was at the beach, and I was like, damn, my DS Lite used to be shiny. You know, it's got that hard shell cover that is all glossy and stuff. Mine was blue. And I was like, I want to make it shiny again. So I put it under a sink and put just massive amount of water on top of it to make it shiny again. And let me tell you, it was shiny. And at that time, I was playing Starfy DS. And I played that, until all the water just completely destroyed my DS Lite. And that's the end of my DS Lite story. But I had a lot of fun playing Starfy DS. Now, Starfy DS was probably one of my favorite DS games and probably one of my childhood favorite games to play, as it was a ton of fun just going through, being the little Starfy that you are and just swimming through the water, destroying every enemy in your way. And it was pretty easy for the most part, as you're kind of just going around and destroying stuff, and you're pretty overpowered, not gonna lie. The final boss was a bit tough, and especially at the end where you had to mash the Y button so hard, and to be honest, I actually never beat that part as a kid until one of my friends who was kind of hyperactive, he just mashed the Y button faster than me, and even though we had to take a few breaks and pause the game a little bit, we finally beat that final boss, mashing the Y button really fast and being able to play as Star Lee with World 9 I think it was, or World 8, I don't remember, but I had a lot of fun playing Starfy with a bunch of fun characters like Mo, Bunsen, Snips, a lot of cool characters, Rocks, Papes. It was a lot of fun. And I didn't get to play the GBA games obviously because those were Japan exclusive, but I later did play those games as I had so much fun playing the DS version. And the DS version was just a lot of fun. It had those Bunsen abilities. You turn into like a dragon, a ghost, like whale or whatever it was, and it was just a lot of fun. It also had a lot of fun mini games that were enjoyable to play, as well as you could play with other people with DS local wireless, and it was just a ton of fun playing it, especially on the beach until my DS Lite broke. But then I also went back to it when I got my DSi, and I still go back to it time to time again because it's just a fun, enjoyable game. Although it doesn't have much challenge other than mashing that Y button at the end of the game, it really is just an enjoyable, cutesy little game similar to Kirby games, and that's why it deserves its spot at number 94. Number 93. I've always been a fan of story in video games, as I cherish the story of a lot of video games, as most of them can even change my life or change my perspective or change my way of thinking. And Tales of Berseria is one of those games. Now, the reason Tales of Berseria is so low on the list is mainly because even though I think the story is really good, it's kind of slow at times, its pacing is a little bit weird, and I don't think it has the best cast of characters. And I don't think it has the best story either. It has a really good story, it has a really good cast of characters, good music, good gameplay, but nothing that really stands out from other games. I think at best it's average slash mediocre for its story, gameplay, and characters. And although I think it is the best Tales game, I think other RPGs kind of outshine it. I really did enjoy its combo system and its gameplay more than the other Tales games, which I played Vesperia and Symphonia, which I didn't enjoy as much, but I do have to admit I did like the characters better in Vesperia, but I do like the story better in Berseria, as it had a lot of plot twists and interesting elements that the other games I wasn't really as interested in. And so that's why I think it's the best Tales game in my opinion, and that's why I think it deserves number 93 on my list. Number 92. I was always into collecting cards, whether it be Pokemon cards or Yu-Gi-Oh cards or whatever off-brand cards there were, even wacky packs I collected. And I had a lot of fun collecting those cards, but I never really got into playing those cards. It wasn't really until video games that I started liking playing cards. And one of those games that really interests me was Slay the Spire. Slay the Spire combines two of my favorite things, being card games and being a roguelike, as you play as 4 different characters, each having their own deck of cards, whether it be the Ironclad, who kind of goes in guns blazing with a lot of attack power, or the Silent, which either racks up poison or racks up shiv damage, the Defect, which uses these orbs to either deal damage or protect yourself, and the Watcher, which uses different emotions to have different effects on you or your opponent. And each character plays completely different, as I just explained kind of a short summary of what each character's deck is like / abilities. And you go through with 5 different acts, or actually 4 different acts, and you fight through these enemies with your cards, and it's really a matter of whether to defend yourself or to attack, as you kind of want to keep attacking your opponent, but you soon realize that your opponent is also attacking you, and so you have to defend yourself as well. So it's a matter of also knowing what to have in your deck. But since it's a roguelike, you start with the same deck every time. But you can change your deck with the shop, as well as picking up a card or deciding not to pick up a card after every battle. As every battle, you get another card. And that card can either be good or bad. It can be offensively or defensively or special, and they have all different effects depending on the different characters. And it's honestly a ton of fun just going through the game, especially when you get really overpowered like any other roguelike and you have all these powerful cards and you just obliterate your enemies. But just like any other roguelike, it's kind of annoying when you get this really good deck and you make one mistake and it's all over. You have to start all over again, which is really annoying. But that's how roguelikes work. Overall though, it's really fun. I sunk at least 30 hours into this game and I've had a blast playing through it. And I probably will continue playing this game, as it's just a ton of fun to just pick up and play, as it's just a fun, cute little card game that has a lot of different decks and a lot of unlocks as well. Number 91. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of horror games, as I feel like they're a bit slow as well as not that scary. But when they pulled the Uno reverse card on me, I was interested. The game is called Carry On, and it's pretty much a reverse horror game, as instead of you hiding away from this giant monstrosity, you are the monstrosity. And it's a ton of fun as you go throughout these levels and just destroying these people and sneaking up behind them and being all stealthy like and just grabbing them and throwing them around, eating them up. It's just so satisfying and fun. And what's cool about it too is it's kind of a Metroidvania, as you go through the game and there'll be places that are blocked off and you need special abilities in order to get through those blocked off places. So it's really cool and unique how it works, as it's both a Metroidvania and a reverse horror game. And so it's so unique, so powerful, so fun, and just a really enjoyable game. It also has a very interesting story as well, as the ending really surprised me, and it was really fun to see the story through the perspective of the humans as you go through like these security cameras and you get to see what this monstrosity really is and what it came to be. And it's just a really cool and fun and unique game, and that's why it deserves its spot at number 91. And so that's going to be it for this video. So those were my picks from 100 to 91 of my top 100 games list. I hope you guys enjoyed, and stay tuned for next week where I'll be announcing games 90 to 81. See you then.